Hello, everybody. I am Sig Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and your pithy orator of Sig Trent Games. Today we're going to be talking about what's going on with Sig Trent Games in this week 16 of our journey. I'll give you some game advice, game design advice specifically, and talk a little bit about what's going on with my life. I think this will be a little bit of a shorter one than last week. We had a lot of juicy details, so I've got a little bit less going on this week, but there's still a lot happening. So let's get started with what's going on with Sig Trent Games, and we're mostly going to be talking about shotgun fantasy, of course, although we'll mention a few other things. So things are going well. I got back my first outline of the cover. So last week I got to look at 3 different options, and I chose one of those, and those were sort of concept images. So this was coming back as some line art and staging and everything for the one that I chose, and it looked really good. I really didn't have any changes to make. I thought it looked awesome the way it was coming together. We talked a little bit about bleed values. Bleed values are just the edge of a painting or an image needs to have some extra space on it, so that if you're going to do printing and the printer cuts it just a little bit differently than you expected, you don't get like a white border. It's a little extra area around the whole painting that's going to have a consistent color or quality. That way you don't get any weird choppiness when you have to cut it up, because printers stuff happens, and so you don't get like millimeter precision, and if you do, then you get artifacting. Anyway, so we talked about that a little bit, but the actual content is looking really cool. The main characters on the cover look really neat, and there's some crazy fishmen on there, and those look really cool too, and the whole background and everything. So I think it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see further developments on that front. Writing, I managed to pick up speed. I've been trying to set myself some ambitious goals for word count. Didn't quite make it last week. This week, I am very, 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 very close. Close enough that I've made my word count. I got about 200 to go. I just need to pop in a couple more spells. But I had some other things to do first. Like I need to get the art orders done for the 4 character pieces that I ordered along with the cover. And those are going to be representing the different classes. They'll also be representing the different origins that you can play in the sort of very basic fantasy part of shotgun fantasy. And I'm pretty excited about that. So, just trying to represent as much of the content from the book as I can in those images. So all the characters will be fantasy characters, but each one of them will have some little piece of modern equipment or something that says, hey, this person has gone through a portal, or someone else has come through a portal and shared technology from our world into their world, or vice versa. So I think they'll be pretty cool looking. We shall see, however. And as usual, whenever I do an art order, I just try to make it like something you haven't seen before. Like it's pretty familiar, like not totally radical and weird, but just little twists here and there that I've not seen or I don't remember, mixed with inspiration of stuff that I just love from other media and whatnot. So see how that goes. And of course, it has to be interpreted through the artist's eye, and then that will always make things that I come up with just a little different and more interesting. So I think it's pretty cool. What else have we got? I finished the 4 colleges and 4 religions. So basically the way I've got things set up right now, the Cleric and Wizard class are pretty much done, barring playtesting and revision, but I've got a first draft of them done. And each of them will let you choose. The wizards have wizard colleges that they can attend, and this gives you different kinds of magical specialization or extra proficiencies or things that are going to make you feel a little bit different from other wizards, and then a list of spells that you can automatically learn from as you level up. And so with wizards, they can learn any spell they want for the most part. You just have to be able to find a copy of that spell to get into your spell book. But this will give wizards a certain amount of theming and a little bit of flavor for your character. And I'm also going to include rules and suggestions. They're not so much hard rules as general guidelines for creating your own colleges of wizardry. They're not super about balance exactly. They're more about flavor and kind of creating interesting ideas and characters. And the way I've done the colleges is that they're kind of centered around different jobs a wizard might do, like their role in society a little bit, in keeping with everyday heroes having professions and things like that, and thinking a little bit more about that. And not everybody's just sort of a murder hobo vagabond adventurer. I want a little bit of a sense of a living, breathing world that people are a part of and have a place in, right? So I think the ones I've got are the College of Lords, which would be like the kinds of wizards who go and advise kings and serve in their courts. A College of Secrets, which would be basically wizard spies or assassins, wizards that work in the shadows. and collect secret information. The College of Travelers, which would be kind of like your classic Gandalf wizard. Wizards who roam the lands, doing good things or seeking out new kinds of magic and exploring, basically. And then, let's see if I can remember the other one. I think it was like the College of War, I believe so, which is basically wizards who are trained to fight with armies in battles. And so it's mostly offensive and defensive magic. So each of them will have a spell list tailored to that, and then 3 different sets of talents that they'll get as an apprentice, as a journeyman, and as a master wizard. So that's the way that's set up. Religions are set up very similarly for clerics, and so the religions will provide a spell list. It's a little bit more definitive for a cleric, so these are the spells that your deity provides to you. And you don't go wandering the world like a wizard looking for your own spells. If your deity doesn't have that magic on tap, you don't really get access to it. But they'll have a little bit larger spell lists, and they'll be pretty themey, but I'll also be looking to make sure they cover all the basics that a cleric might need to kind of fulfill their role in a party. But they will be pretty flavorful, and so I decided on 4 religions, both based on a central theme, but I decided to mix a little bit of my Aeron lore, and honestly, I invented a couple of them that were never part of any of my campaigns, because I wanted to have certain types of abilities. So I've got a sort of a necromancer wizard. I'm not going to remember the names of the gods and the religions exactly, but basically a cleric that protects the dead and sees to their peaceful rest. And so you could be a bit of a ghost hunter, or you could be tending and protecting a graveyard, or you could be seeking out evil undead and putting them to rest, or trying to fight against necromancers who are abusing the dead, that kind of thing. So sort of a good-oriented necromancer cleric. There's like a cleric of light, of course, I think because you just kind of have to have your good healing light spell kind of a cleric. It's just such a classic trope that it would feel weird if it wasn't included, just like I had to have the war wizard and the traveling wizard. I think those are just classic ideas. So you got that, and it's about what you would expect. I haven't done all the talents and details for each of these yet, but I'm starting to flesh out their spell lists. Then I've also got a Cleric of Gel Haste, which is actually an invention of a player I had once. And the idea is this is a goddess of treasure and gold, and so basically their cleric's job is to go out into the world, find treasures, and bring them back to the temple so they can lock them up for safekeeping. So it's just sort of a cool cleric theme because it gives the cleric a reason that they're out being a classic sort of murder hobo adventurer type, right? Going into tombs, taking their stuff. So I always thought that was kind of a cool idea, so I thought I'd put that in there. Plus it should make for a pretty interesting spell list and a great spell list for adventuring clerics. And then what was the last one? That's not coming to me right now. But anyway, always good to leave some things for a mystery. And of course, all these things subject to change. Just stuff I'm working on. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm really happy to get an outline of a definition because that means I can just start and cranking out spells that make sense for these choices. And then I think a while ago we talked about choice support, so then everything will be nicely supported. And we'll have a few more spells that aren't on the list, you know, because we want people to be creative and to be able to fill out all just sort of the basic magics. And of course, you need stuff for wizards to learn that aren't part of the spell lists. Now, some of these spell lists will share the same spells, so you'll see some wizards and clerics having the same spell on their list because there's certain things that are just kind of fundamental and useful and that everyone might want to have access to. Most of the clerics will have some kind of a healing spell and access to the kind of your classic clerical stuff, blesses, because, you know, what deity doesn't bend their divine favor to the clerics that serve them? None that I can think of. Maybe, you know, some very strange esoteric deities or religions, but you get the idea. So there'll be some crossover between them, but then each one should feel pretty flavorful and unique and like, oh, these guys are really cool. They get access to this thing automatically, etc., etc. All right, so that's going on and it's been going well, and I've been filling up that word count and making a lot of progress, so that makes me very happy. All right, what else to talk about this week in Evil Genius? It's been, I mean, sorry, not Evil Genius. Oh boy, it's gonna be hard to break that habit. In SigTrent Games, I was gonna talk. I have Evil Genius Games written on here because I want to talk a little bit about what they're doing. They've got the Return of the Living Dead Kickstarter on June 3rd, I believe it's scheduled for now. So when it goes live, you can go and follow it right now, and I encourage you to do that if you're interested in undead action. It looks pretty cool. You can play zombies. They've got 3 new classes. A bunch of rules, and I do think Return to the Living Dead is a really fun movie. It's got a lot of fun ideas. They're doing a lot of physical stuff for the Kickstarter. So they got pins and plushies and all that kind of stuff. You won't see a whole lot of that at Sig Trent Games, at least not for a little while. It takes a pretty heavy investment to put all that stuff together. So, but more power to them, and looks like a whole bunch of fun. So be sure to check that out if you're interested. Also, I guess they have Everyday Hauntings on Sidekick, which is the latest thing they've got. I guess it's kind of a Ghostbusters themed thing. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. It used to be, of course, everything that Evil Genius puts out, I've laid eyes on, and now that's not the case. So I get surprised by things. Now, some of these things were in the works when I left, but we hadn't started working on Everyday Hauntings, for instance, so I haven't seen any of that. So I'm pretty excited to check it out. Dave gave me a bunch of points on Sidekick, but I've got to subscribe in order to spend my points, so I just haven't done that yet. I was kind of waiting for enough goodies to be on there to grab a whole bunch of them all at once and keep them forever, because that's how Sidekick works. So I think it's pretty cool. And so that's going on. And then in other news, for partnerships, now this isn't official yet, but Chris Tyner of Dreamslayer Studios contacted me. Now, he did a lot of art, especially the character art for the Living Dead project, Return of Living Dead. And also, he publishes the really great Requiem book, which, if you don't have it, is awesome for urban fantasy stuff. It's got tons of cool classes and neat lore for his world, and just lots of great references to different urban fantasy settings, especially with the kind of like supernatural and War in Heavens themed kind of things. It's really great stuff. I definitely recommend that. And he's got a new Cryptids book coming out. But he contacted me and said, "Hey, Sig, I really like what you're doing. I've been watching your videos and I want to do something with you." And so I'm like, "Yeah, that's awesome." I told him about the things that I'm working on, and we kind of brainstormed a little bit how he might help. So I think the thing I'd love to do with Chris, since his adventures and stories that he does for live plays on YouTube are so cool. Definitely my favorite of all the live plays. Just the stories are really interesting. Both he himself as the game master and his players are really good. And so I just like to listen to those while I'm working on stuff. And so I'm really excited about that. And I thought, I'm going to need some adventures for Shotgun Fantasy to kind of show how the Iskaya play can work, and some cool stories that people can pick up, and things that I can run at conventions. So we're going to work together and do some convention-length adventures for that, and whether they'll be published under Dreamslayer Studios or under Sig Trent Games, I don't know, but we'll figure out those kinds of arrangements when we get there. But in the meantime, we're just going to brainstorm some cool stuff and talk about neat ideas to work on Shotgun Fantasy. So I gave Chris access to the manuscript. Also, by the way, gave access to Goober from Evil Genius Games, so that we can talk about what I'm doing and how it works with Everyday Arcana in the future. And, I just like working with people, which is going to bring me to my game design tip of the week this week, which is about working with others. Ooh, check out the smooth transition and the theming. All right. So let's see. I think working with others is a little bit of a tricky subject for various reasons, right? Because in our industry, you have good and bad times working with other people. And it's not something that you want to air the bad times out publicly. You want to talk about the good times, generally speaking. And so partnerships and working together can always be a bit of a morass. And I'm not really here to talk about the bad things. This is really advice on how to make partnerships go really well, and ways that you can leverage other people's work with your own work and blend it together and make great stuff. I suppose that's not really controversial, but when I was writing this, I was like, man, there's so many different things to say about working with other people. How am I going to narrow this down? What am I going to say? And all that kind of jazz. So anyway, let's get to it. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is teamwork goals. So these are the goals you have. Why do you want to team up with another person? What are you trying to do? And what can you get out of it that is different than just doing the work all yourself? Some of these things are going to be really obvious. Some of them maybe not so much, but let's get into it. So the first one is a good teamwork goal is to make each other stronger. And this is something I spent a lot of years as a manager, so this kind of applies to workplace stuff too. But a good way to be in a team is for everyone to get better as a process and a part of being in that team. A team of two people should be stronger than one person alone. If that's not true, then something's not working very well. You should have done it by yourself, right? So one of the ways that teams make each other stronger is you get more ideas. You have 2 lives worth of experience and taste and ideas coming together, and if you share with each other, then the pool of what you can do together is greatly expanded. And so every time I get to work with another partner, inevitably something they do or say gets into my brain, and I go, oh, that's an amazing idea. That's great. It's so cool. Add it. And I never would have thought of it myself, right? So that's just fundamentally the case. That kind of implies that everyone on the team needs to be contributing their ideas, needs to be putting out there, here's some great stuff I have, what's great stuff you have, and listening to each other and getting those ideas back and forth. Okay, so that's it. More ideas. Next is more hands to do the work. And by hands, I mean metaphorically, but more people to write, more people to make art, more people to do design. Many hands make light work, as they say, and this is something essential for a team. If there's somebody you're working with and they're not really contributing a lot of actual work, they're often making work for you. It tends to be how it is. So everybody on a team needs to move some dirt, needs to get some stuff done for it to be a good team environment. So we should all be contributing to make each other stronger that way. I think it's self-explanatory, that one. Someone to learn from. Lean on would be the case too, but learn from, as I look at my notes, is what I wanted to say. We all want to grow. By growing, we make ourselves stronger. You can't grow without lessons, and other people will provide you with a lot of good lessons. Maybe things that they've experienced in their life and they've had trouble with, and they know how to solve those problems when you haven't encountered them. You didn't know those problems might even exist in the future, so now you're aware of them and you have a way to try and deal with them. Brainstorming when problems come up. You get together and you do that, and you're just inevitably going to learn things. Now, I think also it's very good when you're in a team, share your knowledge with other people. Don't do that all day. We all have to get and do our work at some point, right? But I think it's really important to share what you know and to share your experiences so that you can learn from each other and grow. Check each other's work, both for good and bad things. So I love, one of the hard parts about working alone is, like, if I'm the only one who sees the manuscript, no one else is going to read it. That means if I make some horrible mistake that I didn't catch, there's no safety net, right? I love working with another designer who can come in and go, Sig, what were you thinking? This makes no sense. And I'm like, oh, geez. Every time I read it, it looked logical to me, but you pointed out that it totally isn't. That's great. Let's get that fixed. So that's really good. And the good to encourage, because you write something and you go, is this good? Are people going to like this? Does it have any merit at all? Is it dumb? Is it derivative? Is it too much like other things? And then you can get a second opinion. And they go, no, I think it's brilliant. I love it. Or, yeah, it's maybe a little stale. You could spice it up a bit. And so just both the good and the bad, having somebody else to look at your work, validate it, or help improve it. Awesome. You totally make yourself stronger that way. Again, if you're working with other people, take advantage of that. I've seen some projects where everybody just silos off. They all go in their separate corners and they bring everything together. And it's kind of a big mess, in my opinion. And you're not benefiting other than the more hands. That's the only part you're getting. And often you're going to have to synergize and rework things in order to put them all together again. And so maybe you actually didn't save any time that way. So one of the strengths of working alone is, everything that's going on, you can put it all together into a nice seamless package. I think there are more benefits to working as a group than there are to working alone, generally speaking. I'm mostly working alone in SigTrent Games because I mostly have to. I don't have a lot of money to pay other people. But when people want to work with me and they're willing to kind of share the financial risk and the financial benefit, then that's no problem. All right, next part. A goal for your team should be to have a team with complementary strengths. If everybody on your team has the same skills and the same focus and the same talents, then, again, all you get is more hands, right? You don't get all those other benefits so much. So it's really good to have different strengths. And sometimes this can be a challenge. You could be a little too different if you don't have common vision and common values and things like that. That can really clash and create confrontation. But generally speaking, I think it's better to have a diverse team of people with different perspectives than one where everybody thinks the same way. Also, you want to cover your weak spots, right? So there are things that I don't do great as a game designer or as a writer or anything else, right? And there are other people that are fantastic at those things. And there are things that I'm particularly good at that other people either don't like doing or aren't very good at. And the best teams are ones that cover each other's weaknesses and accentuate each other's strengths. Like my wife and I, that's pretty much how it works. She doesn't really love being social with people. I love being social with people. She's really great at doing work that needs to be exactly done the same and repetitive every time. I get really bored and I start to suck at that, right? So we each have our strengths and we cover for each other's weaknesses, and it's a wonderful partnership. And it's a great way to live life. No greater partner than your wife, I think. But partners that you work with, the same different principles apply. What else we got here? Offer something helpful. So of course, different people come with different things. You're hoping that those different things are useful and helpful, of course. Some people might come with new and different problems than the one you have, and unless you're pretty good at dealing with that problem, well, that might not work out so well. So we want to be complementary differences. All right, so the next thing that you should have as a goal in your group is to have clear roles and responsibilities. If you're just partnering with people and you don't really decide what person A and person B are supposed to be doing, well, you may end up with job C being undone, right? And then the whole project isn't going to come together because you're just missing a big piece. Nobody wants to do it, et cetera, et cetera. Or if everybody wants to be a leader of the project and nobody wants to be supportive, well, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to just be going in different directions. You're going to fight over details and stuff like that. Now, you can have co-leads, but you need to lead different areas of the development. Like, hey, you could lead spells, and I'll lead classes, and Goober and I used to do great this way. We didn't both work on each section of the book. We chose up sections of the book that we want to work on, and then we trade our papers, and we go over each other's stuff and try to synergize and, improve each other's work. Worked out wonderfully. We never had to fight over anything. It was great. So it's really clear to know who's doing what and to agree on that before you go out and do your work. You don't want anything to fall through. Talked about that a little bit. Decision making clear. Mutual respect is also super important. So everybody on the team needs to respect what other people are good at and what their expertise is, and defer to that if that is the other person's responsibility. So if my responsibility is editing the book, and I'm pretty good at that, hopefully, to have that responsibility, then somebody else whose responsibility is not editing the book can certainly have input and give me advice and ideas, but ultimately they don't get to make the decision, right? Because you respect the other person's responsibility and their skills to fulfill that responsibility. And that's really important. So even if I disagree with an art director or anybody else, ultimately it's their decision. It's my responsibility to tell them what I think and to offer my opinion, but I don't have the authority to change, because ultimately I have to trust that what they're going to do is good and that they know best and that they know how to do their job well, right? So that's really important, mutual respect. You just want everybody to be able to do what they are best at by assigning the roles and responsibilities. If you don't go through that process of figuring out what everybody's going to do, then you get in a situation where somebody may have an incredible talent at something, but they weren't asked to do it, and so that talent just sort of lies there and is unutilized. So you really want to find out what people are good at and make sure that their responsibilities and roles match their talents, right? Okay, so those are the three things we'll review. Make each other stronger should be a goal of your group. To have complementary strength, and this is when putting your group together. And 3, clear roles and responsibilities when you're organizing how your group is going to work. All right, so here are some good traits for people that you should look for when you're looking for team members. And these are traits that you should try to personify and adopt when you are working with other people. First, be respectful of one another. So you're going to occasionally have disagreements. You're maybe not going to like the way somebody does something, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to always be respectful. That means understand that the other person is a professional that you're working with. You chose to work with them. Be polite with them. Be honest with them. Be kind to them. These are kind of, to me, the elements of showing respect to somebody else. I don't believe in the idea that respect means, you kiss ass and you're a brown noser or any of that kind of stuff. Because that's not showing honesty to somebody. And if you don't show honesty to somebody, I don't think you're actually showing full respect for them. Now, some people think that's what respect is. And if they're in charge, that's what they demand of people. I don't like to work with people like that. So respect is number one for me. All right. Next good trait to have, be eager to support one another, right? So I want to be a person who wants to help other people. And, I often have folks say, oh, Sig, I know you're really busy and you got stuff going on, but do you think you might be able to help me? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I like helping people. So long as I have the time and it's not going to cause my responsibility to falter, I'm going to do the extra effort to help you out as best as I think I can. It doesn't mean I'm going to pick up and do everybody's work for them, but I will definitely, if they have a specific request, do my very best to try and fulfill that, to make the time needed to answer other people's questions or to help them find things, whatever it is. And you really want to work with people who also have that attitude. They're eager to help you out. They want to be useful. Next, to be excited about the work. I've also seen people, you need to make the money sometimes, right? Like, so you get a job, it's not a job you love, but it pays. However, when you're doing creative collaboration, that's not the situation you want. And so even if you are offering money to people, try to make sure they're not just there for that reason. Like, everybody needs to make the money, but you want to find somebody who really wants to work on the project, who's excited about it, who has ideas about it, and who is interested in making it wonderful, right? Has an ambition for it. And then you're just naturally going to go together better. Of course, make sure everybody gets paid, right? That's very important. But ultimately, when you're looking for partnerships, I think that kind of enthusiasm is pretty essential. You can get by without it, but just the end result is usually never going to be as good. There are the rare super professionals who, no matter what they're doing, they're going to put their all in there. But they'll usually show some enthusiasm or excitement because in your head, you kind of have to be there and excited to do your best work. At least I think that's the case. That's why, like, with all the cinematic adventures, I tried to become like a rabid fan of those movies in the process of making those books, right? I'm like going into it. Now, I'll critique things and I just can't help but be critical. It's sort of my nature. But I am going to dig hard and look for all the very best features, the really cool qualities. Why did people love this and why that's cool? And I was always able to successfully do that in a sense and become a real fan of the material that I was working on. Finally is just have compatible personal goals. So people get into creative endeavors for different reasons, and you want those to be the same. Some people want to, have the biggest, most successful game company in the world. That ain't my ambition. I want to be respected and loved and have people remember the work I do as being really cool and personal to them. I don't need to be the biggest or the best, right? So if you're working with somebody who has that goal, you're going to have conflict sometimes. This is kind of the end of my list here because it's not the most important thing. You can have different personal goals and still work together really well, so long as the project that you're working on serves both of your goals in a useful way. So somebody with great ambition wants to make a great product. Somebody who has sort of, an artistic flair and a personal passion also wants to make a really good product. So you can make a really good product together and it's no problem. And that also comes into roles and responsibilities. Just, make sure the artist person has artistic responsibilities and the business person has business responsibilities. And then you should all be very good. All right. So those are my good traits. Be respectful, eager to help, excited about the work, and have complementary personal goals. Next up, let's talk a little bit about boundaries. These are pretty important when you're working with another person. Now, of course, with my wife, there's almost no boundaries at all. So the closer the kind of relationship you have, the more the boundaries fall down. But that's not going to be the case you people make a role-playing game with, right? You're going to need some boundaries. And you need boundaries both in terms of the professional stuff and personal stuff. So let's talk about that just a little bit. I got 3 points here. Everything with me is like bullet points and stuff, It may not sound that way when I speak because I smooth it over in a more conversational style, but my notes are very bullety. All right, so number one, what each person agrees to contribute. So it's really important when you start out that everybody clarifies what it is that they're going to add to the project, what is kind of their responsibilities, right? But in addition to sort of defining the responsibilities, it's important that you don't blur those lines too much. So if someone has agreed to put out 20,000 words and then you're like, hey, I need you to do 40,000 words, right? Well, that needs to be a conversation about setting a boundary, right? So if you set that initial boundary at 20,000, that's the expectation. That should stay as the expectation unless you renegotiate and you have a conversation about it and you agree to change. If somebody's responsibility is not to manage other people and suddenly you need them to manage all the artists or something, Well, that's another conversation you need to have, because unless you agree to do the work, you shouldn't be held responsible for things that you didn't agree to up front. So I think that's really important. That's kind of a boundary of what you're going to do. The next one is understanding the line between professional and personal domains. So just because you work with somebody and you have a really good relationship with them at work doesn't mean you're entitled to know anything about their personal life. Doesn't mean you're the best buddy or their best friend, and that you can ask favors from them that don't have anything to do with work, etc. So it's really important that you understand the lines between professional and personal boundaries and permission and consent, let's say. So, and that goes to things like sexual harassment and stuff. Like, you don't flirt with people in your workplace unless you've had a conversation outside of the scope of work and everyone agrees that that's cool. And then don't do it in a work setting, maybe, but you can do it in other settings together. That's okay. Professional relationships can become personal relationships. I often feel a kind of a kinship and friendship with the people I work with. That's always the case. Nothing wrong with me feeling that way. However, I cannot take my feeling about that relationship and impose it upon those other people, or be resentful if they don't share those feelings, right? So I'll express, hey, I really like hanging out with you. I love talking to you. Hey, maybe we could play some games sometime outside of work, right? That's a way to build a friendship in addition to the professional work you do. That's totally cool. But you really just need to not blur those lines and think that your professional relationship entitles you to anything else. Okay, that's really important. And third, how much slack, pardon me, how much slack is acceptable in your professional relationship? So slack is a term I know from software development. You use it because a lot of the times people plan out a software project, they leave no room for error, and inevitably something bad will happen, and the schedule blows into a million pieces because everything's dependent on everything else, but one thing didn't go right, and then everything falls apart. Redundancy is another term people use, but it's a little more specific. But slack is just kind of like you leave some room for error. You leave some space in which the project and the people can breathe. You leave some time for reflection. You leave some time for playtesting, so on and so forth. That also means, however, if somebody's like, hey, I had a really hard week, I didn't make my word goals, or it was rough, I didn't get any work done, but I'll try to make it up next week. So you need to understand with each other how much slack you have. Some people, you give them a little bit of slack and they will try to take a country mile worth of slack, and that will sink your project real hard if they had real responsibilities. So that's something you need not to have happen. But also, if you're just trying to crack the whip on people all the time, that's going to be a huge pain point. And so people need to know it up front. Now, there are people who just love to grind away all the time. I'm not one of those people. And so maybe that's okay for them, but you need to know what the boundaries are for everybody in the group, both going up. If you report to somebody else, you need to know how much slack you are allowed, and reporting down, you need to tell people how much slack you intend to give them. And the two need to be in some agreement, right? You need to at least be close. It doesn't have to be an exact match. And so once you established that slack, you need to stick within those bounds on both sides of the relationship, the expected and the expectee, as it were. And so that's just a really important boundary you have to have in order to be successful. All right, so those are all my kind of tips and tricks. It's a little unstructured, but I think there's good ideas that you can find helpful with there in working for others. And if you keep a lot of these ideas in mind, you'll just be seen as a good partner to work with, and you'll have people who want to work with you. As where if you neglect too many of these things, people won't like working with you, and then you won't have good partners to work with, and that will suck. So try to avoid that. Now, some people, if you want to be a lone wolf and work by yourself, that's all good. So let me tell you a little bit about Sig's Way, like the things that I do personally. I try to give as much as I can without becoming self-sacrificing. So I always give myself a certain amount of slack. I am not going to, sort of die on the cross of whatever work I'm doing. I'm going to allow myself time to heal and time to breathe and time to entertain myself and to be happy, because my game design comes through joy, right? So I need to feel some joy in order to do good work. But I always want to push myself not to let other people down, and to work hard for their sake and for my sake and for the fans. I want to be always supportive of other people. It's really important to me to say nice things to other creators, even the people I'm not working with, to be a part of the community, because that's the behavior I want other people to have from me. And so I'm going to model that for them. And if we're all supportive of each other, just life is so much better, right? So I always try to be supportive, never undercut anybody else. Never, I may critique things from time to time, of course, but especially publicly, not to take anybody's legs out. I mean, if they're a terrible person, it's sort of a different deal. But this is people who are earnestly trying, and so always be supportive, give them good advice. Some people don't want your advice, they don't want your help. That's okay too. Just let them be. Um, I try to ask for excellence of other people I work with, partly because I want to inspire them to grow and be better, but also because I want that excellence in my product. I want to get from them the best thing I can, but I never want people to burn out. Like, I want them to have the same kind of slack that I allow myself. So while I'll always ask people to be better, I'm rarely going to demand it or, tear into somebody or give them the hard medicine or none of that stuff. That's not for me. I want to be supportive and positive and grow, but I am going to kind of go, hey, I think you could do a little bit more here. I think this could be better. I think if you spend a little bit more time in this area, you could solve a problem that maybe exists in this design, that kind of thing. So trying to ask for excellence from people. Not everybody wants to do that, and that can be a little tough sometimes. But I'm not gonna force that issue. I'm just gonna choose to work with the people that want to give me excellence whenever they can. Also, in going with that, I always try to recognize excellence. Whenever I think anybody does anything clever, cool, neat, it just makes me smile. I try to tell them when I'm reviewing a manuscript, I'm like, this was great, this made me laugh, this is cool. You can see that as kind of a waste of time, maybe, in making notes and stuff, but I don't. I think it's really important to support people's morale and to encourage them to grow and encourage them to continue to work. Because if you don't hit any high points and you don't get any encouragement, you tend to walk away, right? So I want more of that. I always want to develop new talent, so I'm always kind of on the lookout for people who are just starting that I want to be supportive of, people who have never done something before. It's their first game, it's their first publishing. We did that a lot with Netbook of Feats. We got a lot of people who never published anything before, worked with an editor, and I want to help them. New artists, whatever it happens to be. Now, if they're working on a project of mine, they need to be good enough to kind of measure up to the quality standards I want to hit. And there are people who are new and untested that can absolutely do that. So I always try to be on the lookout for people who I think have the potential to be great and just need a little bit of refinement. And I love to work with people like that. Finally, the thing I like to do is just sort of honor my allies. Anybody that helps me, I want to say, hey, this person really helped me a lot. They're a great person. Just to encourage that kind of behavior. And, just to sort of stand in solidarity with the people that have helped me. I want to help them back. I've kind of said that already, but it's really important to me, and it's a big part of the way I like to do business. So that's Sig's way of trying to be a good team member and work with other people. All right, finally, let's get into what I've been doing this week for playing games. Not a whole lot. I played quite a bit of Stellaris. Like, I spent some time playing games. I just didn't play a lot of different games. I decided last week I complained a little bit about my boring peaceful empires. And so I was like, you know what? Let's go to war. And so I put those on pause and I made some space orcs, basically like the Warhammer 40k orcs. I tried to model them. You can't do it exactly, but pretty close in Stellaris. They're always going to be a bit more thinky than they would be in Warhammer 40k, because you need to develop science and spaceships and deal with aliens that want to talk to you and stuff. Boring. But I did make them very good at war, and they love fighting, and basically any opportunity they get to fight with somebody, they're like, yeah, let's do it, let's fight. I don't care if my ships are outmatched, we're going to throw them in and see what happens. So play very aggressively. I'm not always in a war, but I'm always looking for the next war that I can engage in, or the next like space monster I can fight, or whatever I can get into. It's been a lot of fun. I do really like mixing it up in Stellaris. I like the fleet tactics stuff and designing the ships and all that kind of jazz. So been having a lot of fun with that. Unfortunately, the orcs don't get to fight on the ground a lot. I did make my orcs super good at fighting on the ground, but the ground fighting part of the game is a small mechanic. If your stack of army men is bigger than the other stack of army men, you win, basically. So, but any chance the orcs get to invade a planet, they're right there invading a planet. You can come across these primitive societies out there, and you can study them and learn from them and get involved in their little politics, very Star Trek-like. Now we're like, oh, we're just going to wait for them to get strong enough where it's worth fighting them, and then we're going to fight them. And of course, we always win. But been having a good time with that. Nice thing to play in between writing spells. So I'll play a little bit, get some writing done, reward myself with a little orc action, and then go back. All right, life in general, also not a ton to say there. It is Memorial Day weekend here. It's just finished up as I am recording this. And Memorial Day weekend is one of the busiest weekends of the year at the shop, or so I am told. 4th of July is also apparently one of the highlights, and I managed to survive it. It was hard. We did have a lot of customers. We did have somebody call in sick, which put a lot of extra stress on the staff that remained, but I held the line. Helped a lot of customers, sold a lot of merchandise, and it was kind of exciting. I always do really like a challenge. Anytime said, Sig, but you can't do this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I bet I can. Might not want to, but I can. And in this case, yeah, I like helping customers. So it was actually a lot of fun. I was told the store becomes a zone of chaos during these kinds of days, but you know what? I managed to keep that store fairly orderly. Most of the t-shirts were still nicely folded. Most of the clothes and toys were where they belong. There was definitely some chaos going on, but I tried to tamp it down anytime I got a spare moment. So I think I did a good job. Anyway, a little proud of myself, but that's another key thing. Always be proud of your work. And with that note, I think I will be signing off from this video. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, had a nice time on Memorial Day, and here's to some great summer gaming. Bye-bye, everybody.